Good evening, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to another edition of What's Happening. I'm George Binns, and I'm here with my co-host, Elliot Margolis, and we have as our guest this evening Jeffrey Silva, who is running for Ward 4 School Committee. Ward 4 School Committee.
Maybe in the future.
Yeah, I'm planning your future for you. And we start these shows off usually with something very original like, why are you running?
I grew up in Beverly. I went through the public schools. I was fortunate enough after college to land back in Beverly. Missed Beverly while we were away in Baltimore. And we were fortunate enough to head back here and plan our family here, settle in. Our kids have are going through the public school system. Our oldest has graduated, and we have 3 more. While I've been here, I've been able to help out with volunteering, coaching, soccer, lacrosse. I've got involved in some park renovations. And after sort of graduating through the youth lacrosse coaching, I decided I wanted to get involved in the school system as a school committee member.
What do you want to accomplish on the school committee?
I'm curious to see how the money that the city manages for the schools is managed. Curious to see how we spend that money, and I'm also very interested in helping the education. I think with regard to some of the issues why I'm getting involved, in the profession that I'm in, I'm a scientist, I'm in a biotech now. We've had the opportunity to bring in interns from both high school and college, Endicott College, Salem State, Gloucester High School, and been able to see some of those kids cycle through and been able to help them as a mentor, guide them in terms of deciding perhaps where they would like to go after high school, and early college graduates, what they might want to do as they sort of continue along their career path. But one of the things that I've noticed is that I don't think that they're as well prepared as we would like them to be coming into the lab. And so I'd like to get involved to see how I can help with that.
Okay, you're talking about education. You have kids in school now that don't speak good English, don't understand good English, and yet they're mainstreamed into the regular classroom. And because they don't understand the language as well, it holds back people. It holds back some of the better students because the teacher has to spend time with them. How do you feel about that?
In terms of a classroom setting holding back kids that could be excelling or moving faster than the others in their classroom, I think that in time with technology that can change. With kids using laptops as a way to sort of get through some of the coursework, those programs or those tasks could be individualized to move kids along that are able to at a quicker pace within the same classroom, that kids doing that same study perhaps at a slower pace. And so I think we're far away from that, but that's what I could imagine software teaching tools, how they could be used in the future. As of now, how do I feel about that? I think perhaps with the assistance of additional student teachers in the classroom to help out those kids where English isn't their first language, that may be able to help sort of move the class forward while helping those others that are not following as quickly or need the assistance. It's going to take a little bit of money to do that because you would need to staff. But I think using technology, I think that could be addressed.
Have you ever heard of the ulpan that they do in Israel?
No.
Okay, what the ulpan is, as you know, in Israel, people come from all over the world to go and live in Israel. Mm-hmm. And they have a lot of different languages. And what they do in Israel is anybody that does not speak fluent Hebrew has to go what they call an ulpan, which is a school where they learn the language before they can go into regular public school.
Yes.
And so when they go into public school, they're equal to...
They're prepared.
Yeah, they're prepared. Yeah. How do you feel about doing a program like that in the city?
I think that...
it's basically English immersion.
Yeah, I mean, I think those, whenever you... I think that would be appreciated for people where English isn't their first language, having that as a resource to perhaps get caught up or to be better prepared. I think that would be a great assistance for those individuals, for sure.
Curiously enough, as we record this show this evening, today's paper had an article about the teachers, the union in particular, objecting to spending some of the money we get from the state to pay for students to go to other schools, and they wanted to use the money instead exactly for what you're saying, is to how do we get more English as a second language teachers, staff, counselors for a lot of these kids who have learning disabilities or they just don't speak the language well enough to really gather what's happening.
You took my next question away from me, but,
okay.
But that's okay. That's a good follow. No, go ahead. Go ahead.
So I guess the situation comes down to is there's a big pile of money that the city raises every year with taxes.
Yes.
Somehow or other, the mayor comes up with a concept that a certain percent of that is going to be directed towards the school. Mm-hmm. And then the school, through the superintendent, sets up a budget, and the school committee, as we learned a couple of nights ago, figures out, is that the right way to spend it or not? And they go around a couple of times. I guess the problem that I'm having with this whole flap with the union is the money's got to come from someplace. It's fungible. It doesn't make any difference where the original source is. Once it goes into the treasury, if you will, mm-hmm. just take out a piece to cover this. So if you're starting to get into a budget issue, and I guess in your business, you've seen budgets before, mm-hmm. and you know the drill.
Yes.
How do you smooth this over, and how do you get the union to buy into it? Because they're now starting to get to be much more proactive.
There can always be an argument to spend more money.
Yeah,
for sure. And I think in terms of how the money is being spent per pupil, I looked at this number before I came. We're actually pretty close to neighboring. We're between Wakefield and Peabody at a total cost of about $14,000 per pupil. Mm-hmm. And so I don't blame or I don't have any qualms about the teachers asking for more money, mm-hmm. right? To carry out their tasks. We shouldn't have teachers buying pencils and paper to supplement what should be happening in the classroom. Okay, I think we can all agree on that. In terms of the unions wanting to move the needle to bring in more money, the school committee has a commitment to agree to a budget and stick to it.
Yep.
And as a school committee member, that's our role, and also to monitor whether or not we're spending the money throughout the year to stay within the budget that we've agreed upon. Mm-hmm. And so in the following year, if there's more money that is needed, that's when you go through the process and asking for more money. But it has to go through an approval process, and you, as part of the responsibility of the school committee, you watch to make sure that the money is being spent properly. So, I mean, there could be assistance through city officials, opportunities to bring in additional grant monies. Maybe the unions can facilitate that as well. And that could be extra money to throw into the pot. Just like we have projects that are happening on in the city where an area of the city is going to get repaved and beautified. Maybe the same thing can be done for these special school projects where additional funds can be brought in through grant opportunities.
Mm-hmm. Why is it that people just say, well, the more money we have, the better education can be?
That's not necessarily true.
Because
it's a knee-jerk response.
But that's what it sounds like. If we get more money for this, things will get better. I think $14,000 a student is a heck of a lot of money.
Yes.
And, we've got, I don't know how many administrators that get paid big money. Mm-hmm. And, it's where you spend the money, it's not how much. Mm-hmm. And so I get kind of cranky when people say, if we had more money for this, then things would get better. When you look at our country versus the rest of the world, we're not doing too well in terms of education. Mm. And while they say Massachusetts is one of the best in this country, being the best of something that's not very good isn't very good.
Yeah.
So don't we have to do something besides money to get our education?
Well, you have to look at the processes that are in place and make sure that things are efficient. I firmly believe that you should spend the money as if it were yours, as if it were coming out of your pocket. Just because of the way I grew up, and I understand the argument of putting more money in to make the environment better, but I think the other side of that is also to make sure that you're spending the money wisely, to make sure that you don't need more money. Okay, this happens in industry. You get more money in a science lab. People are buying reagents. Okay, they're not using all of the materials. They're shopping for new tools that they'd like to have but don't necessarily use them. So I'm not saying that's what would happen in the school system, but if there's an excess of money, it's not spent wisely. And I'm not saying that there's an excess of money in the school system. All I'm saying is that we really need to look at how the money is spent and scrutinize whether or not there could be ways to improve. How can technology that we brought in over the years be used to reduce costs? Because technology should eventually, over time, reduce costs, right? Mm. Do we need to redefine what the acceptable classroom size is, because now we have the assistance of technology? Right? Before technology, the accepted classroom size was X pupils per teacher. Should that change with technology? Right? Should that number be larger because you have the technology to assist you? And that's what I mean by sort of revisiting to make sure that we're spending our money wisely, and that perhaps there's an efficiency there that we can take advantage of, and then put that money towards something else that needs the money spent. Mm-hmm.
You mentioned early on that your corporation has interns from the high school, and that you were somewhat disappointed that they weren't as well prepared. In what way were they not well prepared? Or what did
One of
you
the things
expect
that
them to
stands
be?
out to me, one of the things that stands out to me
Yeah.
is that smartphones, the whole use of smartphones, smartphones for some reason has been accepted as an extension of the laptop technology, right? When in essence it's a phone and a game. It's a playing device.
Okay.
It's a chatting device. That phone should not be in the classroom. Okay? Because
How does this show up when the intern comes through
the
your
intern
front door?
comes in, I'll give you an example. The intern that comes in is working in a laboratory. Okay? They're doing experiments. They're setting up experiments, numbering vials, moving liquids into those vials, carrying out an experiment.
Yeah.
Phone rings, or not rings, he gets a chat. Someone's texting him. He stops. He's in the middle of doing an experiment. He stops, he's chatting, finishes the conversation, goes back to work. Hopefully he remembers what he was doing and continues filling the vials and processing the samples. He gets another text. And then the experiment goes wrong and you ask, well, what happened? Well, during that experiment, he's got 10 texts. So he or she doesn't really know what happened, right? So the whole point there is that not understanding that phone should not be in the workplace, and not understanding that, when you're working on the bench, you shouldn't have that phone in front of you. It should be off. It should be in your desk. And when you want to go text or find out if someone texts you, go to your desk during the coffee break or when you have a break, and then check it. You it doesn't need to be fused to your hand. It doesn't need to be on your hip. That's what I mean.
So you're saying that phones shouldn't be in the classroom while the teacher is trying to teach the kids?
While the lessons are being taught, while the teacher is instructing the classroom, it's a temptation, right? If it's on their hip, if it's in their bag, it's a temptation, right? They could be communicating with students that are not even in the classroom, right? The point is their attention is taken off of the curriculum that's being taught, and then perhaps if they're missing some information, like what the homework assignment is, they didn't get the homework assignment because they were busy texting. In the same way that when you're trying to find details of what happened with the experiment, well, 10 texts later, you're not quite sure what happened, right?
George, he probably believes you shouldn't text while you're driving, too.
That wouldn't help, no.
Yeah.
I can't text or not even driving. That's another story. I'm too old to catch up with that game. But, okay, so the issue of being easily distracted by a cell phone.
Yeah. And it's not, to me, it's not multitasking. To me, it's diluting your efforts.
Yeah, and the same thing is true with laptops, too. I mean, the old joke I always like is the kid sitting down at the front of the classroom, and he's reading the newspaper, and the professor looks over and says, "What are you doing?" He says, "My laptop broke." So, yeah, there's that issue of distraction. But at the same time, what about the level of knowledge, learning, expertise they bring when they're an intern? What do you expect from them?
What do we expect from a high school intern?
Yeah.
What we expect from a high school intern is to come in and have a hunger to learn, and to be able to follow a protocol, to be able to record the steps that they have done, right or wrong, accurately, in case there is an error or discovery. You can go back to that notebook to find out, what had happened, and so being able to carry out, being independent in the sense that once given a protocol, they can carry that out. Being honest in the sense that if given a protocol and they don't understand it, they'll let us know. and we're happy to go through the protocol with them several times until they understand it. Knowing what you know, knowing what you don't know, not faking it, right? Being courteous in the work environment, and being on time, working a full day, which means you come in early in the morning, 9, let's say. Maybe there's a couple short breaks. Then there's lunch, and then when you return from lunch, a 1-hour lunch, not a 2-hour lunch. You're ending the day at 3 or 4 o'clock, depending on what your supervisor says.
So now that you've got this idea of what an intern should be doing, as a member of the school committee, how do you get that into the classroom so that when the kids show up, they've already got this kind of an ethic, a background, a work history?
Well, it can be, those are things that, those types of, that structure can be expected of the teacher depending on what the classroom setting is, right? Where there's a certain structure in terms of, we're going to start the class, first 30% of the class is going to be chalkboard or whiteboard discussion where I'm sort of going through the material that I'm going to ask of you at the end of the class on the computer. So I'm going to show you how this is done. We'll go through a couple problems, and then there'll be another section of the class where you're going to go through that and maybe end the class with questions. So that structure is something that could reinforce that type of expectation.
Well, this gets to be a process whereby the school committee is telling the teachers, which is the union too, this is how you're going to run the classroom.
Well, yeah, I don't think it's the job of the school committee to tell the teachers what to do.
Okay, how do you get this message? What I'm perceiving is it's a very important message that when somebody shows up in a factory or a laboratory to do something, they have to have a certain ethic, a certain work structure, a certain background.
Yes.
And you can't have the time, right, to spend just getting that fundamental understanding into every one of your interests. They got to bring it to the party.
Yeah, so I think perhaps that discussions, the teachers can get feedback. There are internship programs in the high school. If they're following through, if the school is following through with those internships, there should be some feedback from those companies back to the teachers, back to the administrators to let them know what worked, what didn't work, how is it that the student could do better, and that feedback could get communicated back to the teachers, and they can brainstorm about how to adapt their classroom setting to provide those types of attributes, discipline from the students.
Good point, discipline. I visited a number of charter schools, and I visited a number of public schools. Charter schools are public schools, but the discipline difference is huge. Charter schools seem to respect the classroom. The kids do. They respect the building. They respect the teachers. Education is partly discipline, just like not using your phone is partly
like
discipline. So we don't have, the only discipline we have in public schools, it seems to me, is when you're on an athletic team. And going with that same formula, teachers tell me, and I have 2 daughter-in-laws who are teachers, so that's 2 of them, that when they have a parents' night, the only parents that show up are the ones that don't need to show up.
Right.
And that's part of the problem with our education system. How can we solve that problem? And you don't have a lot of time to answer it. So
I think
You're almost off the hook.
I think the teachers need to be able to run their classroom. That's their classroom, and the administrators need to protect them, need to buffer them from parents that may disagree with how they're running the classroom. But the administrators have a clear policy of what the school expects and what is expected of the student, what is expected of the parents, and that the teacher is carrying out what she thinks is best for the student to be able to teach those students. I think the classroom, the discipline in the classroom comes from the culture of the school, and I think the administrators can help set the culture where students are excited about the school, like you were describing with the charter schools. I think it can be done. It's just like a company, like a CEO. What a CEO does for a company makes you excited about working for that company, right? The administrators can do the same thing to invigorate their students about being at Beverly High School and why Beverly High School is such a great, or Beverly school system is such a great place to be, and provide that atmosphere where kids want to do well. I think, a lot of this also is on the shoulders of the students. Mm-hmm. Right? The students need to be motivated to want to invest their time, effort into learning, and so, it's a partnership.
Well, one of the things I think we get to is that charter schools work because the parents really want their kids to do well, and they want to get them into the best school possible, and that synergy works both ways. But we're now down to the 2 minutes when you talk to the camera and do your bit.
Thank you for inviting me, giving me the opportunity to speak. I'll end by saying that I've been a long-term resident of Beverly. I am excited about being able to serve as a school committee member. I think I have a lot to offer in terms of being able to look at what we have in the school district and provide some advice on how to improve the quality of education in Beverly. So thank you.
Okay, well, thank you. This was interesting. You handled some tough questions, I think.
Thank you.
This is Jeffrey Silva for School Committee of Ward 4. The most important thing, remember, this coming Tuesday, vote, okay? And it's not only for school committee, but you got to vote for everything. I don't want to hear complaints from people when they don't vote. Make your voice be heard. Vote on Tuesday. Jeffrey, thank you for coming, and good luck.
Thank you very much. Thank you.
Thank you.
Appreciate it.